Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Kathy Aranzana, and today I'll be doing some Copic coloring using magical dragons from My Favorite Things, a couple of the coordinating dies, as well as the Scallop A2 honey cuts from Honeybee Stamps. To start out, I stamped two of the dragons onto 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock. I used Memento Tuxedo black ink because it is Copic safe. And then I went in with YG25 to map out all of the shading and the shadowy areas that I wanted to have on my little dragon there. Once I was done with mapping out the shadows, I will go in with YG03 and color in the rest of his body. And I'm telling you that ahead of time so that I can kind of move on and let you know about this card and how I came up with the concept, which actually was by choosing the chalkboard cardstock before the stamps. I am part of a stamp club, and every month we create a card built around a specific theme. For the month of September, the theme is school days, and I have 0 stamps related to school. So I kind of had to work backwards and go through cardstock and build my card from that. I knew that I had a piece of chalkboard cardstock somewhere in my stash, and until, I dug until I found it. And that was kind of my starting point, my jumping off point was I have a chalkboard that's got the alphabet written on it, so we can do a classroom scene. And if I do a classroom scene, then I'm going to need a teacher. So there's my teacher right there, the big dragon, which I'm just kind of doing more blending and whatnot. And then you'll see in, about now that I blended all of my YG25 out, so I go back in with YG17 to kind of recreate those shadows and get that dimension back, particularly around his leg right there and along his bottom where he's sitting in the base of his tail. And that's something that, that I truly do love about Copic markers is you can keep building color and keep adding more color. If something is blended out too much, you can go in with a darker color. If it's not blended enough, you can go in with a lighter color. So for this little dragon, you'll see I kept working it because I did not want to have to start over again. I also, with the YG17, I decided to add a little bit of texture to him, so I added a few dots on the top of his, I guess that's his knee, and then I did a few dots on the top of his head as well, just so that he wasn't so flat looking, I guess. I thought it added something that was pretty cute. Now for the baby dragon, who by the way is learning the alphabet in my little school classroom scene here, I colored him the same way as I did the big dragon. I started with YG25, went in and filled in the rest of his body with YG03, and went back with the YG17 just to kind of recreate those shadows and to get that depth that I was looking for. And I think I added, I add the little dots to him as well. Now for his belly and his horns and the spikes on his back and his little wing there, I used YR18. And as you can see, those spikes on his back, not a whole lot of real estate, so it was literally just a dot of color. Even with the YR14, which is my mid-tone, again, just a dot. And the YR21 is my lightest shade, so I could blend them all together. And back to our big dragon, I used, again, the same colors, YR18. And I'll list all the colors that I used below in the description. They will also be listed on my blog, and I will link to the blog post below as well. Continuing on with his belly and whatnot, The mid shade there was YR14, and I'm back in with the YR21 to blend it all out. And once I am done coloring the dragons, I have all my pieces ready to go to build the card, and I did use the die cuts to cut out the dragons. And the Scallop A2 honey cuts, that is how I created the frame for my chalkboard as well as the chalkboard. And for my classroom, I wanted to have wallpaper, so I had striped cardstock, and I just adhered that to a top folding landscape card. It's an A2 size, so it's 5.5 by 4.25. And I put that up at the top of the card. And then to create a floor, I'll have this detailed out on my blog because I didn't have the camera on when I did this, but I basically just drew a line, colored it in, added some texture, and then cut it down to fit so it would look like the floor of a classroom. For the chalkboard, I cut out the scallop rectangle from the honey cuts dies, and I cut the scallop off, which was really easy to do because there is some stitching detail around that die. And I used the same size die to cut out the brown cardstock for the frame of the chalkboard. So the chalkboard actually fit quite nicely in the frame with because I was able to cut it out along those stitching lines. And so I just set that chalkboard up on the wall, and of course I have to have foam tape in almost every card that I do, so adding some foam tape to the back of the dragon there to pop him up. And I had offset the chalkboard a little bit further off to the right because I knew that the teacher was going to be kind of to the left of the chalkboard there, and it would fill in that space quite nicely, and it would balance it once he was placed down there. And more foam tape on my little baby dragon there. And then I can't quite decide how close I want him to be to his teacher, so I set him down and then I move him back. I set him down and I move him back. And he finally finds just the right spot. And once I have him settled in, I use an E43 marker just to add a little bit of a shadow underneath them, so it didn't look like their little bottoms were, you know, floating in the air. And that's it for the card. Thanks so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for stopping by.